Hi everyone, my name is Andrew, and this is going to be a video tutorial about how to install your own custom 1-hour 1Life server. So the ability to do this isn't quite publicly available. The developer Jason over here mentions that he's not even shipping out binaries for this because it's not quite ready and it's not that high of a priority. So what I've done is I've created my own installer using a combination of SSH and Ansible. And this thing will go ahead and clone all three of the repositories, build and compile it all for you. So over here to the left is a Ubuntu 18.04 machine, and this machine has no configuration on it. All I've done is I've fired up VirtualBox. I created a virtual instance, and the one custom setting that's important to make is you need to bridge the adapter so that you'll be able to connect to it. And then down here, now essentially you don't have to do this, but I strongly recommend you write down this MAC address and then go into your router and create a DHCP reservation for it. That way your server will always get the same IP address, and it's a guarantee that you won't get duplicates on your network. Okay, so I'm assuming you've already done this. Let's go ahead and begin the installation. So you want to first start off by installing Git. Next, you want to create a temporary workspace for the repo. This can be named anything, but I'm going to go ahead and stick with the documentation. And then I'm going to navigate inside this folder. Now I'm going to go ahead and clone the actual repository. And since it's all code, it goes almost instantly. And this next part is where you do the actual installation. If we list out the current contents of this directory, you can see that it's already executable. But in case it isn't, I'm going to say go ahead and make it executable with the chmod. And then all you need to do now is run the install. And you notice if we run it, it prompts us at the bottom that we have the ability to do a walkthrough or kind of a guided install. I'm going to go ahead and Control-C out of this and do the guided install. That way I can talk to you about it and show you all the options that are available. I'm going to go through the screen. Okay, so the first option, this is just the initial account you set Ubuntu up with. And then you also need to provide it your password. This is for the Ansible playbook in the background. Now, if you were doing a non-guided install, it would just go ahead and install the server. But because we're doing guided, it's going to show these are all the options. So the maximum amount of users, this one's pretty self-explanatory. If you want to leave it at the default, just go ahead and press enter. Eve spawn location. This is to because in a LAN environment, with the way the server is normally set up, is you would spawn randomly. And it can be incredibly frustrating if you're trying to play with your friend and find each other. You're just wandering around aimlessly looking for each other the whole time. So this will spawn you in a fixed position every single time. Next is your login credentials. This is whether or not you need an official account. This is also set to false by default, so the server will just allow anyone to join. And then this is the server password. I'm going to go ahead and actually put a test password just so I can show you how it works when you provide one. And then this is the default port number. I strongly recommend that you leave this at default so everybody knows what to use. If you put this to a different port, my Ansible playbook in the background will create a UFW exception in the firewall for you. And then I'm going to go ahead and let this run. Now this installation may look like it gets stuck at a couple of parts. Essentially it has to download about a half a gig worth of data because it clones all three repositories and then gets you set up with all the needed dependencies. While that's going, I'm going to I'll show you a couple of important client configs. So this is an important configuration file, the data version number. If you want to see what version of the client you're currently using, that's where it would be. Another important config is like that password we just set up. there's a file in here called server password, and this is where you need to specify what the password is and then just save it. And if you want to be very secure, what I would recommend doing is using a strong password generator. Generate a password about 100 characters in length, save it to that file, and then just provide your friends with that file. Okay, so the install, I'm going to go ahead and let it do its thing, and then I'm going to speed this up through editing. Okay, so the installation has completed, and referring back to the documentation, all we need to do now is essentially start the server. And the way we do this is through the OneLife command line utility that I wrote. But before I start the server, I want to go ahead and review the help page. And this is essentially a list of all the commands and how to use them. Some of these are kind of essential, like set version. It's very important that your client and server versions are the exact same. If you have a mismatch, the client won't be able to connect. And then you have a couple of password options here at the bottom. Okay, so the syntax is pretty simple to start it. Oh, and I also forgot to mention that if you ever want to reset the map, a reinstall will wipe out the old one and install a new one. Oh, and the script, as well as the playbook, Ansible by nature is idempotent, so if there's ever any type of error throughout the installation, you can just go ahead and fix the error and then rerun the playbook, or the script that starts the playbook. So I'm going to go ahead and start the server. If we go back to the client and start it. So going back to earlier, we set the client as well as the server up with a password. And I'm going to go over something unique that happens when we do that. But first, let's review the settings. Make sure custom server checkbox is checked and that the IP address and port number are filled out correctly. Remember, on a Unix host, you can use IP space A to get the IP address. Let's go back. Okay, and if I were to log in right now, it would fail. But if I provide any type of string value for either my email or key, and then I press login, it logs me in just fine, and the game works great. So I'm going to go ahead and quit. And then one more thing, the install files. I'm going to go ahead and gracefully shut down the server. Everything that script does is installed in the OPT under OneLife. And then navigating in through here further, if we go through the OneLife file, server, and then settings. Oops. This is where all the server's essential settings are. And if we list them out, there's quite a few that you can play around with. So this was all I had. Hopefully this helps you out. Goodbye and good luck.